Several up to him.
I always have to Google it early because I'm always sure I'm going to get stuck by the train. Because I always recommend let my dog out.
Okay. Everybody knows. I just got one question.
So people aren't very faithful or.
Would you call the roll, please?
Robert Kraus,
Present.
Jason Blair,
Here.
Melissa Hunt,
Here.
Terry Kavner,
Here.
David Roberts,
Here.
Mark Ham,
Here.
Glenn Lewis.
Here. Would you please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 2 is the consent docket. Item A is receive and approve the minutes of the regular city council meeting held March 2nd, 2015. Item B, approve and ratify claims and expenditures for FY 2014-2015 in the amount of $2,456,443.73.
Motion to approve.
All right, thank you.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, let's call for the vote, please.
Jason Blair,
Yes.
Melissa Hunt,
Yes.
Terry Kavner,
Yes.
David Roberts,
Yes.
Mark Ham,
Yes.
Robert Kraus,
Yes.
Glenn Lewis.
Yes, item carries. At this time, we'll recess the city council meeting and convene a public hearing.
Mayor, Jared's going to make a brief presentation, and then we'll receive any comments from the public.
Okay, I need to read this off though. Item 3 is receive citizen input comments regarding the city's application to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, for Community Development Block Grant, National Disaster Resilience Competition, CDBG-NDRC funding.
Mayor and Council, this is approval to submit our Phase 1 application for the National Disaster Resiliency Competition. In the Phase 1 application, we address short-term vulnerabilities such as severe storms, ice storms, and tornadoes. And we also look at addressing our long-term vulnerabilities, such as lack of water supply, rising temperatures, droughts, and building a case in the application to focus on water resiliency for our community long-term. During the past several months, we have collaborated with multiple agencies and have created some wonderful partnerships to include the University of Oklahoma, the City of Oklahoma City, and the Oklahoma Water Resource Board in supporting our Phase 1 application. And Phase 1 is just, like I explained, it's really broad. You're selling HUD a broad idea of what you would like to see and or what we're going to focus on if we're invited to a Phase 2 application. The applications are due March 26th. If we're invited to a Phase 2 application, the invitations will go out June of 2015. And if we're awarded funding, they'll be announced in December of 2015. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
There's no one signed up to speak on this. Is there any citizens that would like to comment on it?
Just so if we're approved for the first round, then the second round would be our plan as to what we would like to do with possible.
Right. Phase 1 is just the idea. If they buy into the idea, Phase 2, we would get into project specific, what we would do with the money if we were awarded money, and then it'd be project specific based in Phase 2.
And they plan on making their decision this year.
Yes, Phase 2 decisions will be made, announced December 2015, And if we are moved to phase 2, we will know in June of 2015.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Just on the public hearing part.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're not there yet.
Oh, excuse me.
Okay, thanks for that anyway. Since there's no one signed up to speak. Okay, we'll close the public hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, you want to do item 3 now?
That was 3.
That was 3, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it says action on here. It's like, okay, there's no action on that. Okay, at this time, we'll recess the public hearing and reconvene the city council meeting. Item 4 is consider adoption of resolution number 81615, approving submission of an application and all required certifications to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, for Community Development Block Grant, National Disaster Resilience, CDBG-NRD funding. This is from management.
This is the action for that, right?
This is the action to approve the resolution
Yeah.
approving.
Now, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Thank you both. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on this item? Okay, would you call for the vote?
Melissa Hunt,
Yes.
Terry Kavner,
Yes.
David Roberts,
Yes.
Mark Ham,
Yes.
Robert Kraus,
Yes.
Jason Blair,
Yes.
Glenn Lewis.
Yes, item carries. Item number 5 is consider adoption of resolution number 81715, expressing intent to assist with financing to provide funds for the purpose of constructing, reconstructing, improving, or repairing streets or bridges for the use of the city of Moore, Oklahoma, and seek reimbursement through the issuance of general obligations bonds in the amount not to exceed $15 million.
This is the legal language that Terry Hawkins submitted to this, but this is the item that we talked about at the last council agenda, where we are beginning to incur some engineering expense on this, and we'll need to begin to pay those bills before we issue any of the bonds. And so I talked to Terry, and this is the resolution and the language that he suggested, where it has the $15 million figure in it, but it'll be just a few tens of thousands or whatever in terms of the preliminary engineering work until we can issue the bonds and the first phase of the bond issue. And I've talked to Terry and to our financial advisors about doing that probably in the summer. Around $5 million or so. We intend to issue the $15 million over time, as we've done with our larger bond issues, to hopefully not have as much of a spike effect on our millage levies as we would if we issued it all at once.
But by issuing the first $5 million, then that will give us funds on hand to acquire the necessary right-of-way and stuff like that.
It would be primarily engineering and right-of-way acquisition, utility relocates, anything like that that would be necessary probably for the next year or so. But the only thing we have right now is some small, relatively small engineering bills at this point.
I want to make a point, just so everybody knows, we're talking about the bonds that were passed by the voters. This is not new bonds. I've had a couple of people call and ask me this.
Yes.
If we were doing more bonds even, and it's like, no, these are the ones that the voters approved.
Yes, sir, that's
So
correct.
I just want to make that clear.
Make a motion to adopt this resolution.
Okay,
A second.
okay. We have a motion and a second. Would you call for the vote, please?
Terry Kavner,
Yes.
David Roberts,
Yes.
Mark Ham,
Yes.
Robert Kraus,
Yes.
Jason Blair,
Yes.
Melissa Hunt,
Yes.
Glenn Lewis.
Yes, item carries. Item number 6 is consider approval of a payment to the Church of Firstborn in the amount of $8,142.95 for the city's cost share of a 12-inch water line bore located at Northeast 27th and west of Eastern Avenue.
Mayor and council, this is a new church under construction on Northeast 27th Street, just east of the underpass, the railroad underpass there on 27th on the south side of the street. You may or may not have seen it, but they're wanting city water, and they need city water for both fire protection and potable water. We have no city water from the railroad tracks to Eastern. And what this expense is to upgrade the size of that bore, the existing water lines on the north side of 27th. So even when the city wants to tie onto that and extend it back east to provide water there on them homes there on 27th, we'll be able to do so. And this is the hard cost for upsizing the bore and pipe size and things of that nature. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
So we're going to take that from an 8-inch to a 12? Is that what?
Yes.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve.
All right, thank you.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on this item? If not, let's call for the vote.
David Roberts.
Yes.
Mark Ham.
Yes.
Robert Kraus.
Yes.
Jason Blair.
Yes.
Melissa Hunt.
Yes.
Terry Kavner.
Yes.
Glenn Lewis.
Yes, item carries. Item number 7 is consider approval of a contract with Meshach and Associates PLC for development of a citywide drainage and stormwater master plan, Lake Thunderbird TMDL compliance plan, and stormwater quality master plan in the amount of $395,000.
Mayor and council, this is a citywide drainage and stormwater master plan that we've needed for quite some time now. We've never had a master drainage plan for the city. And this is going to be funded through our CDBG DR funds because it is eligible planning expense for that, the master plan. And I'm going to introduce Brandon Claiborne. He is with Meshach and Associates. They are a engineering firm who specializes in this type of work. And I'll just let him take over from here.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Member of council, thank you for having me here tonight. Try not to use up too much of your time. I've been asked to give a short presentation to explain what we're going to be doing under part of this contract. There's a few different pieces to it, and to give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you might have about what we're doing and why we're doing it. As Elizabeth said, my name is Brandon Claiborne. I'm with Meshach and Associates out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. We have a lot of experience in doing exactly this kind of work for many different municipalities, mainly in Oklahoma. First of all, just an overview of the project as it was described in the original proposal, request for proposals, and then through the process of us submitting our proposal and interviewing, competing against other firms to try to win the work. You can divide this project into 3 main pieces: a master drainage plan, which would include hydrology and hydraulic models. Hydrology being trying to estimate how much water would run off from a given rainfall event, and the hydraulics being hydraulic models used to estimate how deep is that water going to get. The Lake Thunderbird TMDL, you're probably familiar with the study that was done, listed that as an impaired water body, and that study was done to try to identify what were the contributing factors leading to that water body being impaired and being difficult to use for water supply purposes. There has been a compliance and monitoring plan approved, of which the City of Moore has to have a plan in place by later this year. So this would include the development of that plan. The third phase of the project would be the MS4 program development. MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. It's basically water quality for your stormwater. As it stands right now, separate from the TMDL issue, we wouldn't have to necessarily sample our stormwater to make sure it's clean enough to pass on downstream to other people. But because you've been the EPA delegated this program to ODEQ, and ODEQ had a selection criteria that decided which communities would be involved in that program. And you guys made that criteria, largely because you're in an urbanized area, adjacent to an urbanized area. And so it just says we need to have, and I'll get into the details in a minute, but there are certain things we need to have in place as a community to make sure we're doing our part to not to have polluted stormwater. So the particular items that would be included in this project would be developing a stormwater management plan for the city, updating their current plan and developing a new plan as needed, filing for a new permit from ODEQ. We anticipate that new permit cycle is going to start this year. And then selecting best management practices that the city can use or encourage that would be used to help improve the stormwater quality. I'm not sure if you received a color copy of the map that's in your packet. If you didn't, it'll be a little easier to see on the screen. This is just a generalized map of the drainage areas of the city of Moore. The city of Moore being outlined by the black boundary that you see there. The yellowish area on the right, the North Fork River, the pink area sort of in the middle along the I-35 corridor being the Little River. And then up in the northwest corner, you see we have a few areas that drain off to the west that actually go to the Canadian River. It's kind of interesting as an engineer that does hydrology and hydraulics that the water that drains off the northwest side of town will never commingle with the other water until they get to Lake Eufaula. It just amazes me that it can be that close together and then have to run that far to get back together again. But that will be the main area that we're focused on. You will see there is some area outside of the city. And one of the questions we often get is, why are we studying areas outside of the city? Well, even if that's not your water, it comes into your city. We need to know how much is coming. We don't have to do any detailed hydraulic studies to develop any floodplains or anything like that outside of your city limits. But we do need to know how much water is coming. Fortunately for the city of Moore, we don't have a lot of water outside the city limits that comes through your city. You're primarily just composed of your own water. So the goals of the master drainage plan will be to evaluate existing and potential drainage and flooding problems within the city of Moore. Once we've done all of our analysis related to those problems that are identified, we'll develop a prioritized capital improvement and implementation plan that the city can use moving forward. This will include how to mitigate current problems that we have and what we can do to prevent future problems. Any future development, how can we incorporate future development in such a way that it helps to reduce our flooding problems instead of adding to them. And it'll also include financial analysis and feasibility of a stormwater utility fee and how that might be used to help fund operations moving forward. Let's talk a little bit more specifically about how we're going to meet those goals of a master drainage plan. The first thing we're going to do is obtain all the input we can from the city and from the public. It's really not a good idea for a consultant, especially one from as far away as Tulsa, to come into town and tell you, I know where all your flooding problems are and I'm here to tell you how to solve them or to figure them out. Every time that we do these, we try really hard to engage the public by whatever the best methods that the city has used in the past to engage the public. Now, whether those are public meetings, whether those are mailings to go out in utility bills, whether it's using some form of electronic media through your Facebook page or reverse 911 systems, we'll work with the city to make sure we can collect that information as thoroughly as we can. We'll use that information to identify problem areas. The city generally has a pretty good handle on the problem areas, but we always find more that the citizens come and talk about when asked that we weren't aware of. Once we have those problem areas identified, we will develop hydrology and hydraulic models that are set up in a way to have points where we can analyze those specific problem areas. And for each one of those problem areas, we'll develop alternatives of how we can reduce the flooding. It may be an area where a house floods and it costs $2 million to solve the flooding problem, and it's cheaper to buy out a property. There are some federal grant programs available to help with that as well. Sometimes that's an alternative. Sometimes it's let's put some detention in to reduce the flow rates. Other times let's put another storm sewer system in or a larger channel system, improve the channel that we have to give us more conveyance. The thing we have to be careful when we do those kind of projects is to make sure that the improvements we're making in one area don't cause additional flooding in another area. When we do this master drainage planning across the whole city and have models of all of the basins, we can analyze and see what those impacts are. And that's one of the main goals for doing it this way, instead of just chasing one of your drainage projects kind of all over town. So once we've identified alternatives for every single problem area, we'll work with city staff to decide which one is the recommended plan for that area, which one's the best fit for the city in that area. And we'll take all of those recommended plans, develop a ranking system with the city based on what criteria they feel are the most important. And then that system will then be used to score every single one of these recommended projects. So you have now a prioritized list of capital improvements that you can use over the next 10, 20, 30, 50 years if the case may be. As I mentioned before, we will be evaluating the potential for a stormwater utility fee, and in the end we will have a final report with cost estimates and implementation plans. And that final report will also include where the master drainage plan overlaps with the water quality plan and the TMDL compliance plan. There are some areas where those things overlap and data can be shared amongst the different systems, and that'll all be coordinated in one final report at the end. So mentioned when we started, there were 3 components. The first being the master drainage plan, the second one being the Lake Thunderbird TMDL compliance plan. The city is required to submit or to have a compliance plan approved by November of this year. If you work backwards, giving ODEQ time to review the plan, we really need to have it ready for submittal, having it reviewed by the city and ready to submit to ODEQ by September 14th of this year. It doesn't give us very much time. There are a lot of ways to approach a project like this. When it comes to how are you going to comply with the TMDL plan that's been developed, we want to utilize methodologies that are cost-effective and efficient for the city and that apply to what the city's contributions are. Instead of making a blanket statement to say, all right, for all construction sites now, we're going to require a really strict standard so we don't have any sediment runoff anymore. Well, that may or may not be possible if you have highly dispersive clay soils that are hard to get out of the water without adding a coagulant to them. But you may say, hey, we're going to step up our inspection program, and hey, this silt fence that we're using out there just isn't working. It's not maintained well, so we're going to go to a different type of system, maybe a stronger silt fence. There are places that require wire to be put in behind the silt fence to make it more stable so it can stay there, so that it doesn't, you don't have to worry about it being maintained every 15 or 30 days. So whatever those types of best management practices are that you can implement that over time will help reduce your loads or your contributions to the water quality concerns of Lake Thunderbird, that's what we want to do. Those best management practices will be identified in the stormwater management plan that we're going to talk about in a minute, and we'll make sure that they're consistent with one another. It doesn't make sense for you to have a TMDL compliance plan that isn't consistent with your stormwater management, your water quality plan that the city's running as well. I don't know how familiar some of you are with the area. That's a little bit hard to see, but the brownish, yellowish lines that you see are all subbasins, generally speaking, of the drainage area that drains into Lake Thunderbird that you see on the bottom. The bluish purple square is the city of Moore's boundaries. The north, the pink areas to the north are Oklahoma City. The south areas to the north are the city of Norman. If you're familiar with the report, the city of Moore has a pretty sizable share of the amount of reductions that have to be made in the pollutants entering the lake. At first glance, you say, well, wait a minute, we have a real small area draining into the lake. Why do we have such a high percentage of the water quality problems being assigned to us? If you look at a land use map for this area, where red in this particular map would be commercial or high intensity development, commercial, industrial, that sort of development, or high intensity residential. The green being more of an agricultural development. You can see that if the primary pollutant sources were coming from an urbanized area, then obviously the city of Moore would take a heavier weighting of what was coming to the lake. So the compliance plan for the TMDL, the process is similar to what we do in a master drainage plan. Unfortunately, the particular reduction targets and goals have already been set by a previous study. We can't go back and undo that. What we can do as part of our monitoring plan is collect the data so that in the future, if we need to reassess that, we'll have the data and we'll have the plan in place to be able to do that. But we want to build partnerships. You guys don't own Lake Thunderbird, and you guys do not, to my knowledge, take water from Lake Thunderbird, but your neighbors do. And it would seem to me to be foolish for each one of you to all spend money doing the same thing, doing the same types of analysis. If we can build a partnership and work together on some of it, that would make sense to help spread everybody's resources out a little bit farther. But we also want to make sure that the City of Moore is fairly represented, that you're not being asked to do more than what you're capable of doing to help solve this problem. There's some other steps there that lay out the items that we will go through to be able to bring you into compliance, but we have full confidence that we can work with the city to get a plan put together that works for the city, that the city can afford, that we can get approval through ODEQ to meet our deadlines. On the monitoring plan, it states in the TMDL monitoring plan that we will have a 35% reduction in Lake Thunderbird, And you guys have a considerable portion of that as your share. If you wanted to see the numbers, mainly it's nitrogen, phosphorus, biological oxygen demand, so anything that's eating up oxygen out of the water, and total suspended solids, sediment. Erosion, either stream bank erosion or construction site erosion be your main contributors to sediment. Lastly, we have a stormwater management plan. As I mentioned, you guys are what's known as a Phase 2 small MS4 community. There's a general permit from the state that you get that says we're going to have a plan in place to educate our public and to make sure that we're not, or that we're treating stormwater quality importantly. The new permit should be out any day now. It's about 5 years out late. We're working off of a permit from 10 years ago, but the state hasn't issued a new one for us to apply. Part 4 of that permit says that you have to develop a stormwater management program. We will work to update your old program to make sure it's compliant with the new permit and help you get a new permit assembled, and also put procedures in place that allow us to have our annual report done and allow us to make sure you're in compliance with DEQ regulations when it comes to your stormwater quality permit. If you're not familiar with that, if that hasn't been something that's been discussed here in the past, there are 6 minimum control measures in that stormwater management plan: public education and outreach, public education involvement. There are lots of projects you can implement that take care of both of those. Illicit discharge detection and elimination. That basically is that you have to spend some time out in the creeks and out looking at the storm sewers to see if there's something in them that shouldn't be there, and have a plan for how you're going to resolve those issues when they arise. Construction stormwater runoff control. You guys are already doing a pretty good job of that, my understanding, of making sure you're inspecting your construction sites and that they're doing their due diligence. Post-construction management. What are we going to do with this infrastructure after it's built? How are we going to make sure it's still functioning as it was designed? And that's another BMP that the city has to take control over. The last one's public prevention and good housekeeping. So how are you going to make sure the city's following its own rules? It's really hard to go get on to the contractors or the developers or the people living in the neighborhoods about their contributions to water quality if the city isn't paying attention to their own contributions. So that has to be a part of your plan as well, training your own staff about the program. So our plan for the stormwater program will be to develop a program document and a format that's works for the city, something that they feel comfortable using that they can implement. There will be effective BMPs developed for each one of those minimum control measures that we identified. We will make sure that we have control measures that are achievable. There's nothing to get you in more trouble than coming up with this grand plan and not being able to implement it. So we want to make sure we do something that's achievable, and we want to make sure it's something that we can measure as well. How do we measure whether we're making progress? If we can't measure it, then maybe that's not a very good best management practice. There are a variety of sources out there and ideas of looking at what the other communities in the area have done, or even nationally have done, look for ideas of how we can implement best management practices to help you meet those goals. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions you had about this particular project.
I have one. What's a BMP?
I'm sorry, it's a best management practice.
Okay.
Lots of acronyms in there. Apologize.
I asked Brandon to give you all a little bit more of a detailed discussion of this contract than we do some, because I think it's very important that you have a feel for going forward, particularly on the TMDL and the stormwater management plan that we're talking about, expenditure of funds, budgeting additional time, materials, even people at some point perhaps in the future, and beginning to do some things that will affect the public in terms of these best management practices with the developers, the development community builders, as well as individuals, and how they put fertilizer in their yard or this or that over time we're talking about. But it's something that's going to be significantly different than what we've dealt with before, although Elizabeth and her department with Mike Harlan, who's our employee, has done a good job with first phase of the MS4 plan, but we've got to ramp that up, which will involve more dealings with the public and more money, frankly.
So is that what the possible stormwater utility fee could be something that
Yes,
passed on?
we're going to look at that as an alternative to fund this. Oklahoma City, I think, and other communities have set up a stormwater utility fee as a part of the utility bill. And again, no recommendations at this point, just a look, see at what it might look like or cost to fund going forward some of these requirements.
And I would just put an emphasis on the citizen input. I know in Ward 2, I know we're on, not all of them, but when I talk to people, it's always a concern about the drainages and streets and flooding and all that. So just do all we can. Obviously, there's only so much we can do to get that citizen input, but through all of our resources that are available, reach out to people who live here and get their input and then be a part of this plan.
Anybody else? Okay, do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the contract.
All right, thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this item? If not, would you call for the vote, please?
Mark Ham,
Yes.
Robert Kraus,
Yes.
Jason Blair,
Yes.
Melissa Hunt,
Yes.
Terry Kavner,
Yes.
David Roberts,
Yes.
Glenn Lewis.
Yes, item carries. Item number 8 is consider approval of an agreement with RKG Associates Incorporated for analysis of impediments to the fair housing choice.
Mayor and council, this is an analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. It's a required document that we have under the CDBG entitlement program. It has to be updated every 5 years. This document is a certification to HUD that we are affirmatively furthering fair housing within the city. Each year through our CDBG funds, we fund Metropolitan Fair Housing Council to act as our agent. If a citizen has a fair housing complaint, we refer them to them and they handle it for us. That's been working great, but again, this plan has to be updated every 5 years, and October is when our new plan has to go into effect. On page 88 in your packet, we did solicit responses from 3 agencies or companies that do this. RKG was the lowest at $20,500. And if you remember, RKG and Associates was the company that completed our housing market analysis approximately about 2 years ago now, probably. And we were happy with that. So with that being said, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Are we able to fund this with the disaster relief?
It's actually funded through the normal entitlement program. Yes.
Motion to approve the agreement.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion on these items? If not, would you call for the vote?
Robert Kraus,
Yes.
Jason Blair,
Yes.
Melissa Hunt,
Yes.
Terry Kavner,
Yes.
David Roberts,
Yes.
Mark Ham,
Yes.
Glenn Lewis.
Yes, item carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Item number 9 is consider resolution number 81415, adopting the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Infrastructure and Public Facilities Policy and Procedures.
With the disaster recovery funds through HUD, we are required to have policy and procedures for infrastructure and public facility implementation. This was a recommendation from our internal auditor that we've hired, HUD recommendation, and also the Office of Inspector General recommendation. So we have been working, putting this together. Mr. Drake's reviewed it and is comfortable with it, and so staff recommends approval of the policy and procedure, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve.
All right, thank you.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on these items? If not, let's call for the vote.
Jason Blair.
Yes.
Melissa Hunt.
Yes.
Terry Kavner.
Yes.
David Roberts.
Yes.
Mark Ham.
Yes.
Robert Kraus.
Yes.
Glenn Lewis.
Yes, item carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Item number 10 is consider resolution number 81515, adopting the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Housing Rehabilitation Policy and Procedures.
Again, this is also a requirement from HUD, Office of Inspector General, and a recommendation for our internal auditor. We are required to have a policy and procedure manual for the housing rehabilitation program using the CDBG disaster recovery funds. This is in partnership with the City of Oklahoma City because they will be assisting us with the rehab program. They've looked over it, their staff looked over it, and as have we, and we recommend approval of this item. Any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Make a motion to approve.
All right, thank you.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on this item? Nobody here knows what the hell it is anyway. So would you call for the vote?
Melissa Hunt.
Yes.
Terry Kavner.
No, it's true.
David Roberts.
Yes.
Mark Ham.
Yes.
Robert Kraus.
Yes.
Jason Blair.
Yes.
Glenn Lewis.
Yes, item carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. At this time, we'll recess the city council meeting and convene the Moore Public Works Authority meeting. Item number 11 is the consent docket. Item A is receive and approve the minutes of the regular Moore Public Works Authority meeting held March 2nd, 2015. Item B is approve, ratify claims and expenditures for FY 2014-2015 in the amount of $1,661,341.92.
Move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Well, it's a consent item. Would you call the vote, please?
Terry Kavner.
Yes.
David Roberts.
Yes.
Mark Ham.
Yes.
Robert Kraus.
Yes.
Jason Blair.
Yes.
Melissa Hunt.
Yes.
Glenn Lewis.
Yes, item carries. This time we'll recess the Moore Public Works Authority meeting and convene the Moore Risk Management meeting. Item number 12 is the consent docket. Item A, receive and approve the minutes of the regular Moore Risk Management meeting held March 2nd, 2015. Item B is approve and ratify claims and expenditures for FY 2014-2015 in the amount of $190,750.06.
Move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Would you call for the vote, please?
David Roberts.
Yes.
Mark Ham.
Yes.
Robert Kraus.
Yes.
Jason Blair.
Yes.
Melissa Hunt.
Yes.
Terry Kavner.
Yes.
Glenn Lewis.
Yes, item carries. At this time, we'll recess the Moore Risk Management meeting and convene the Moore Economic Development Authority meeting. Derek?
Item 13 is roll call. Call roll, please.
Robert Kraus.
Present.
Jason Blair.
Here.
Melissa Hunt.
Here.
Glenn Lewis.
Here?
David Roberts.
Here.
Mark Ham.
Here.
Terry Kavner.
Here. Item 14 is the consent docket. Item A, receive and approve the minutes of the regular Moore Economic Development Authority meeting held February 17th, 2015.
Make a motion to approve. Second.
Would you call the roll, please?
Mark Ham.
Yes.
Robert Kraus.
Yes.
Jason Blair.
Yes.
Melissa Hunt.
Yes.
Glenn Lewis.
Yes.
David Roberts.
Yes.
Terry Kavner.
Yes. Item passes. At this time, we'll recess the Moore Economic Development Authority meeting and reconvene the City Council meeting.
All right, thank you. At this time, item 15 is new business. Item A is citizens forum for items not on the agenda. There's no one signed up. Would anyone like to speak? Okay. Item B is items from the city council or city trustees.
I had an opportunity to go with Todd Jensen today and look at the Central Park, the progress that is being made over there. If you haven't got a chance to do that, it's pretty fascinating. Let's go inside the center and look at just how large that facility is going to be. It's easy to get excited about the great things that are coming that way. So be worth your time to take a look at it.
We certainly would be pleased to individually, or however you'd like to do it, unless there's four of you, to do it at any time. Take it and show it to you. It's really beginning to take shape, as you can see, and is exciting to see what's going on over there.
And
So, and he'll do that for you to anybody else. So, yeah.
Speaking of parks, my wife and I went over to the Arboretum on 34th Street the other day. I had not been over there. It's a small park, but I was amazed at how well it's being used. It's pretty neat, great park system.
A lot of people out there, wasn't there? Surprised me the other day when I was driving by there. Anybody else? Okay, item C is any items from the city or trust manager?
No, at this time.
I have one more thing, I'm sorry, I forgot.
Too late.
We have, well, no, wait.
Too late. Yeah, we voted too late. Okay, go ahead.
No, it's the new, somebody maybe, we're not even listening, that's okay. On the city webpage, you can, there's a social media next step or next something. Next door. And you can have groups about in your neighborhood, and you can talk with other neighbors, and it's, I guess, similar to Facebook if it were a private page, but this is just for your neighborhood, and you can address, having some kind of a sale, or if there's a garage sale, or if there's some crime, or things that are happening in your neighborhood. And I did that, and there are like 15 of my neighbors that have already signed up for that. So it's been great to get to know some of these people that live in your neighborhood. So are you going to talk a little bit about it?
Just, right, I just want to encourage everybody to go to the website because it's on the home page. I think it's about the third story down. And you can click on that and it tells you everything you need to know about it. But super handy, and again, just for anybody in the city limits of Moore, you should really pop on there. And it's just like Mark said, it's very similar to Facebook without all the other stuff. So it's just knowing about what your neighbors are up to, and not in a sneaky way, but just very conversational and very good. It's a great tool for us to give information out and for us to get information
And
back.
we can also use it, as you just
Absolutely.
said.
The city of Moore is actually a neighborhood, so we are in there as well, and we can push information out to all neighborhoods, and the neighborhoods can ask us questions, and then individuals within neighborhoods can ask us questions. And so every day we field about 5 or 6 questions from that. Typically it's regarding maybe crime or park information, recreation information, and so we're able to respond back.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. At this time, we have executive session on here. Section 307, Title 25. Oklahoma statutes permits the public body to meet in executive session for certain specified reasons under certain specified conditions. It is the opinion of the city attorney that the city council may consider and adopt a motion to meet in executive session to discuss the following items. Item A, discuss potential acquisition of certain real property in the city of Moore and authorize staff to proceed as appropriate as authorized by 25 Oklahoma statutes 307B-3. Item B, convene to executive session. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion that we convene to executive session.
All right, thank you. Second. Thank you. We have a motion in a second. Would you call for the vote?
Robert Kraus.
Yes.
Jason Blair.
Yes.
Melissa Hunt.
Yes.
Harry Kavner. David Roberts.
Yes.
Mark Ham. Glenn Lewis.
Yes, we're convened to executive session. Would you call the roll back from executive session, please?
Robert Kraus.
Present.
Jason Blair.
Here.
Melissa Hunt.
Here.
Terry Kavner.
Here.
David Roberts.
Here.
Mark Ham.
Here.
Glenn Lewis.
Here. Thank you. At this time, we reconvene from executive session. Do we have a motion on the item?
Make a motion to approve as directed.
All right, thank you.
Second.
We have a second. Would you call for the vote, please?
Jason Blair.
Yes.
Melissa Hunt.
Yes.
Terry Kavner.
Yes.
David Roberts.
Yes.
Mark Ham.
Yes.
Robert Kraus.
Yes.
Glenn Lewis.
Yes. Item carries. Item 17 is adjournment. All right, thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Would you call for the vote, please?
Melissa Hunt.
Yes.
Terry Kavner.
Yes.
David Roberts.
Yes.
Mark Ham.
Yes.
Robert Kraus.
Yes.
Jason Blair.
Yes.
Glenn Lewis.
Yes, thank you for coming. We're adjourned.
Surge may have